Lesson 23, Final Row. In this lesson, we're going to take a look at how to find the last row of data in your data set. This is a critical concept and something that we do all the time. Think about data sets that you might get. For example, an invoice register. You might have some number of rows today, 150 invoices, but tomorrow you're going to have a different number of rows, 175 or maybe 125. So you have to be able to find the last row in the data set. Now this is complicated by two things. One, the possibility that there's some blanks in the data, and then also Excel 2003 versus Excel 2007. So let's take a look at all this. Let's get started. All right, I've talked about previously how to navigate through a data set by using the END key. So if I go to my keyboard and press the END key, first thing you'll see is that you're in end mode. Now in Excel 2007, it's down here. It says that we're in end mode. In Excel 2003 and earlier, there was just a little tag over on the right-hand side where the word end would appear. In end mode, you can press any of the arrow keys and you're going to jump to the edge of the data set. So right now I'm in end mode. I press the down arrow key and I jump down to the last record. If I would press end and then right, I jump to the last column of data. End up will take me back up, and from here end left would take me over to the left. It's interesting that if you would press end right from here, it's going to skip over all the blanks until it gets to some data. So if I would add some non-blank cells here, from cell E4 to end right, it will jump the gap to the next set of data. End right will take me to the edge, and right will take me to the last cell in the worksheet. So end, a great tool. You just need to understand how it's working. And I use this end tool all the time to figure out where the last row of data is. Typically, what I would do is I would say, let's start at cell A1, press the end key and go down and figure out where we end up. So that would be something like this. You'd say range A1 dot end Excel down, and then ask for the row. We would assign that phrase to a variable, and that would usually find the last row of data. So let's switch over to Visual Basic here. We'll try it. Sub find last row. Final row. That's the variable name that I use. You could use any variable name you want. I like the variable name called final row because it really tells me what we have. So I would start at range A1 dot end Excel down dot row, and we'll just report here, message box. The last row today is ampersand final row. All right, so let's try it out. We'll take a look at our data set here. We should have 55 rows of data. Notice that because the macro is saying that it's going to start at A1, I can be anywhere I want to be, either in or outside of the data. We run that code, find last row, click run, and it says the last row today is 55. All right, this is very useful. I now know that if I'm going to write totals, I'm going to go to row 56. I can use that information. Frankly, every single macro that I write usually starts with this line that has final row. All right, a couple of complications. We have control over what we do in Excel, but unfortunately we're getting data from elsewhere. We're getting data from legacy systems that come from the IT department. Some of these legacy systems were written last month or last year, but some of them have been around for 20 years. And you have a variety of people using those systems. You might have 10 people over in your order entry department all entering orders, and one day one of those people is going to figure out some weird keystroke to hit that's going to make that old legacy system not work right, and they're going to end up with data where they managed to get a blank where there's not supposed to be a blank. I remember I had a program that would go through, find the last row, add the totals in, set the print range to that area, print it, email it, do all these kinds of things. And it had been running fine for a couple of years, and then all of a sudden, one day, the data set opens up and there's a blank. And so my macro conceptually goes to A1, presses the end key, presses the down arrow key, and the macro I mean, frankly, macros are really stupid. They just do exactly what they're told. The macro says, oh, okay, hey, great. Today the last row is in row 10. We're going to go to row 11. We're going to type the word total. We're going to come over here. We're going to add a sum. We're going to set the print range to this area. Page layout, print area, set print area. We're going to print that 45 times. The admin sends it out, and someone said, wait a second. What do you mean we only did $3,000 yesterday? It was a $100,000 day. What are you talking about? And then we had to go look at the original data set, and we saw this blank here. We said, oh no, this is really bad. And then, my macro, which had been running for 2 years flawlessly, is all of a sudden called into question. Wait a second. Has this ever happened before? Well, no, probably not. It hasn't happened before. But we were just stung this one day when it turned out that there was a blank cell somewhere in the data. So after that, I started thinking about it. I said, okay, what would be a lot safer? Here's what would be a lot safer. Let's not start in A1. Let's go down far, far, far below the end of the data where there would never be records. And I'd start from that point, and I would press the end key and then the up arrow key. And that would tend to end at the last row. So what I would write for years and years and years, probably from 1995, deep into the 2000s, I would say range A65536 dot end XL up dot row. Basically, go to the last cell in the spreadsheet and use that cell, and everything was good. Thousands of times in my life, I've typed range A65536 dot end XL up dot row. 65536, of course, that's where Excel used to end. It just, it's one of those numbers that became ingrained in my head. My fingers can type it without even thinking. Everything was great. Until word starts to spread that Microsoft is increasing the number of rows in Excel. Excel 2007 isn't going to end at 65536. No one knows where it is going to end, but we know it's going to be more than 65536. I remember hoping that they at least would double it up to 130,000. Wow, that would be great. Double the size of Excel. I don't think anyone ever imagined that they would go to 1 million rows. 1048576. Well, that kind of created a little bit of a stir, because now we have all this code, this legacy code that's out there running that starts at 65536. You could certainly have a data set that has records there. We had to adjust our thinking. And initially I thought, okay, well, this is going to be simple. We're going to go through and we're going to say edit, replace, change area occurrence of 65536 to 1048576. And our code would just keep working. Well, a couple of problems with that. Problem number one. You hand the code to someone who has Excel 2003, and it's going to say, hey, this cell doesn't exist. We can't use 1048576. I can't go there. That's not a cell in the spreadsheet, and it's going to end with an error. It's going to be a 1004. It's going to say, I don't know where that cell is. And so you kind of had to have the situation where you say, okay, we're going to check and see what version we're in. And if we're in version 12 or later, then we know that we have 1048576. If we're in version 11 or earlier, then it's 65536. But it's even more complicated than that. What happens if you open an Excel 2003 file in Excel 2007? Well, on that particular day, in that particular file, you only have 65,000 rows, 65536. And so it really created a bit of consternation in the VBA community. How are we going to deal with this? And then finally someone realized that there's a way to figure out how many rows are in the worksheet today. Let's switch over to VBA here, and I'm going to come to the immediate pane. In the immediate pane, I'm going to ask for print rows dot count rows. Now you remember back from the VBA parts of speech, row is an object, rows is a collection of all objects, and it turns out that it's a collection of all the rows that we happen to have in the spreadsheet today. So if I ask for the count, I'm going to get 1048576. Now let me try that again with an Excel 2003 file. We'll just create a new workbook here. Create, and I'll just put some data in that workbook, and I'll save it. File save as an Excel 2003 workbook. Close that. and then open the Excel 2003 workbook. Now you'll see if I press end down here, I end at 65,536. So if this code is running while that workbook is the active workbook, then we get 65,536. Ah, brilliant. Rows.count is a dynamic variable that's going to tell me how many rows I happen to have in the worksheet today. So what we ended up doing is, instead of using range A1 or A65,536, we erased all of that and we said, look, we're going to go to cells, rows.count, comma 1. We'll use the end keyword. Instead of using down, we use up, and figure out what row we're on. So this line of code, final row equals cells, rows.count, comma 1, dot end, XL up, dot row. That line of code is something that you are going to use again and again and again. Just pause the DVD, write this down on a sticky note, and put it on your wall. It's something that the macro recorder is not going to put there for you. You're going to use it over and over and over and over. Just something to commit to memory, something that you'll find yourself using all the time. So here, let's go home here. We'll add some data, maybe even have a blank. If I run this code here, find last row, it's going to tell me that the last row today is 13. If I'm back in an Excel 2007 workbook and I run that code, the last row today is 55. That ignores the blanks. Even if there's not blanks, of course, it still works. We'll add some more data here. Run the macro, so it's a different day. We run the macro, and it says that the last row today is 61. So that one line of code, figuring out where the last row goes, a critical component. You're going to use this all the time when you are looping through all of the records. You're going to use it when you need to figure out where to write the totals to. You're going to use it when you need to figure out where to write the boilerplate data beneath the data to. Sometimes, I don't know how many columns I'm going to have, and we'll use final call equals cells, and I start in row 1, and we do columns.count dot end XL to left dot column. Now it's far less frequent that I don't know how many columns I'm going to get. Usually the data set is pretty well fixed, but sometimes we need to figure out how many columns we're going to use, and you'll use that method that basically starts out at either IV1 or XFD1, presses the N key, presses the left arrow key, and figures out which column we're going to hit. A couple of very important concepts there. We'll use these in the next lesson when we start to talk about loops. Well, I hope that you found this lesson helpful, and thanks for watching.
Looking to advance your career by acquiring new skills? Tired of expensive off-site training programs? Wish you could learn from the best instructors in the industry? Look no further than Live Lessons. Self-paced, personal video instruction by the world's leading technology publishers. Each live lesson comes with a DVD featuring 3 to 4 hours of instructor-led classroom training, sample program code that allows you to work along with your personal instructor, and an example-rich study guide. Live lessons allow you to watch the entire course from start to finish, or navigate directly to any of the individual lessons. You'll literally watch over the shoulder of your instructor as he shows you how to build state-of-the-art applications. Live Lessons, the power of the world's leading technology experts at your fingertips. To learn more, visit mylivelessons.com today.